distinguished panel, but first I have an announcement to make, which is that after all the sessions today, which is this one followed by some closing remarks, everyone's invited to a lunch reception at the Asan Institute itself. The buses will be waiting outside the first floor main lobby entrance and will leave at 11:30. Please meet the staff members at the lobby entrance after all the sessions close. Now, to move on to our topic, nuclear energy and our green future, which I suppose ought to come with one or perhaps two question marks. Do we have a green future, and what role does nuclear energy play in it? Our panel, starting from my far left, is Professor or Dr. Tatsujiro Suzuki from the Japan Atomic Energy Commission, and formerly that served on the Nuclear Safety Commission and is a professor in nuclear sciences as well. And next is Professor Chang-Sun Heung, Professor of Nuclear and Quantum Engineering at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, KAIST, and he sits on the OECD's Nuclear Energy Agency and is a specialist in nuclear safety issues. Ellen Leibson, the President and CEO of the Stimson Center, where she also directs the Southwest Asia project and has served for 25 years in public service at the NIC, NSC, State Department, and Library of Congress. And finally, closest to me, Dr. Abdelmajid Mahjoub, the Director General of the Arab Atomic Energy Agency in Tunis, where he served after working for 7 years at the IAEA in the Department of Technical Cooperation. He's also worked as an expert for a number of international organizations, including the UNESCO, the FAO, and the World Food Programme. The format will be, as in previous plenary sessions, our panelists are going to make short opening statements of about 7 or 8 minutes. I may ask 1 or 2 follow-up questions, and then we will open it for a general discussion. And we're going to start in the far east, or far left,
okay,
with Dr. Suzuki.
Thank you. I'd like to raise 3 points regarding the green future and the nuclear power. First is, what's the definition of green future? And second is reassessment of nuclear energy after Fukushima. And the third point is, how do we get from here to there? Okay, first, what is the green future? I think everybody thinks the green future means probably how to respond to the climate change. Of course, that is probably one of the most important things to consider about the green future. But I like to broaden a little bit, or maybe wider, definition of green future. Since I became a commissioner of Atomic Energy Commission, I look at the law which established the Atomic Energy Commission, and also promoting nuclear power, nuclear energy from the beginning in 1955, which says a very important thing for our green future. The law says we have to limit the nuclear energy to only the peaceful purposes. That is very important. And making nuclear energy as a step toward promoting, improving the both welfare of human society and promoting the living standard of the people. So this is the fundamental, basic purpose of the promoting atomic energy. I thought this is a very important goal. And we have to go back to the origin of this spirit of this law to promote nuclear energy, particularly after Fukushima. And also, the law says, in order to do that, we have to assure the safety of the nuclear power, of course, and making the nuclear energy policy transparent. And the Atomic Energy Commission should make the policy-making process as a democratic way. So this is a very important law, and I have to remind this law to think about the future of nuclear energy. That's the first point. Second point, given this mission, Okay, how do we reassess nuclear energy after Fukushima? Of course, first is assuring the safety. As I said yesterday, the role of Atomic Energy Commission is not to assure nuclear safety. But under this law, we think about this important mission under the Atomic Energy Law. So on May 10th of this year, after the accident, we issued a statement to reassure the safety of nuclear energy again, saying that regulatory authorities in Japan, including, of course, the NISA and the Atomic Nuclear Safety Commission, to set up the new safety goals and make sure the existing nuclear power plants will meet these new safety goals. Without this assurance, we cannot get the public trust. So if that's the case, we say the nuclear authorities should have a determination to stop the nuclear power plants. This is a strong statement beyond our territory of the Atomic Energy Commission. But we thought this is an important statement we have to make after Fukushima. The second, after Fukushima, we would like to do is reassessment of nuclear energy after the Fukushima. Means what will happen to the cost of nuclear power after Fukushima? How much we have to consider the so-called externalities of Fukushima, environmental destruction that Fukushima will have brought, and the people's anxiety, and also what to do with the waste, huge waste created by the Fukushima. So we have to consider all these new environmental impacts of nuclear energy, and so we will have to do recalculation of the power generation cost of Fukushima, cost of nuclear power. This is very difficult. I don't think we can do in a few months, but I think we try to do a preliminary analysis by the end of the year. So this is an important step for us to recover again public trust of nuclear energy. Okay, that's the reassessment of nuclear energy. And how do we go from here? When you think about green future, it is a long-term goal. It's always difficult from the current status to move to the green future, which is it's called the management of transition of society. This is very difficult because if you have to transition from a 20th century society, which is based on fossil fuel consumption, to the green future means based on non-carbon free society. It requires fundamental change in the social infrastructure, lifestyle, regulations, maybe require the fundamental change in industry or government structure. So it will be very difficult to do. It takes a long time, probably 30, 40 years. But that's what we have to do. Given the Fukushima nuclear accident and also the great earthquakes, this is a crisis situation. But at the same time, it could be a great opportunity for Japan to take this route for the green future. If you look at the Tohoku area, it's a huge devastation. No infrastructure, but means that it is a good chance to restart the new infrastructure for a green future. Actually, the government said set up the rebuilding of Tohoku area, a commission for the rebuilding of Tohoku. And one of the goals is to build the eco-friendly society in the area, develop new infrastructure for green energy future in the region. For instance, like building renewable energy, capital of green energy, renewable energy in the region, and also smart grid, new energy infrastructure, and so on. So this is a good opportunity for Japan to move toward the green future, including, hopefully, the highest standard of safety of nuclear power. Okay, I will stop the presentation here.
Thank you very much. You mentioned that regulators have introduced new safety goals
Yes.
after the disaster. But is there not also, there's been some criticism of the regulatory framework itself? I mean, is that being amended, and how?
It is included, yes. We said that too. Yes.
I mean, so what, there will be new regulators set up with new safeguards of their independence, or?
Well, that will take some time. And the one thing the government always said is to set up the independent nuclear safety regulatory authority. So that's probably take some time, but that's what we have to do. But what I said is setting a safety standard.
Yes.
It's before that. We have to do European stress test.
Sure.
To make sure that existing nuclear power plants will meet the new conditions after tsunami.
Thank you very much. Professor Chang.
Okay, thank you. Okay, to me, a green future means green growth. So maybe economic growth without the environment pollution. So right now, you have the three types of energy: fossil energy, such as oil, coal, and gas. And second is nuclear is the second type of energy. And these days you talk about renewable energy, such as solar and wind and biomass. But right now, fossil energy has a problem with greenhouse gas. And also, fossil energy has a problem with the energy resource. So that's why in the future you need nuclear energy or renewable energy to reduce the greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, such as carbon dioxide. So you actually nuclear and renewable energy. Before I talk about the nuclear energy, I like to talk about the renewable energy, especially in Korea. Renewable energy is good. You need more research and development. But actually, at this moment, in Korea, it only accounts 1% of the electricity, for example. But the 1%, but the most of the renewable energy in Korea is from the waste burning. Yeah? So 90% of 1% is from waste burning, and only 0.1% is from the solar and wind. So it's very limited supply, and also it's very expensive. Right now, for example, solar energy, electricity for solar energy is about 80 cents or 70 to 80 cents, and the utility buy. But nuclear energy only it costs 4 cents, so almost 20 times more expensive. So even though you like the renewable energy, it has a very limited supply, and also it's very expensive. So now that's why in Korea rely on nuclear energy much. Currently, 40% of electricity is from nuclear energy in Korea. So far, Korea very enjoyed the cheap cost of electricity compared with any other country. So right now, Korea very boast of the cheap price at electricity, and so last 30 years, Korea enjoyed nuclear energy. So especially during the financial crisis, you call the IMF crisis, at that time, Korea don't increase the cost of the electricity because of nuclear energy. So nuclear energy, the fuel cost is very cheap. So in Korea, last 20 years, consumer price index almost increased 200%, but the electricity cost is only increased to 10%. So right now, still, Korea has a steady increase in the nuclear energy. So in 2030, you expect 60% of electricity from nuclear energy, according to our, national energy plan. So that's the, so that's at this moment, especially in Korean case, there is no other, choice actually, because of you don't have a natural resource, you don't have any oil, you don't have any, gas. You have also you have very small amount of coal. That's one reason. But Korea. So this time I like to mention about these things too. In the future, you need electricity more. In the future, our world become more and more electrification. Yeah. So even now, in the future, our transportation system become more rely on the electricity. Yeah, electric car, hybrid car. So in the future, then you need more electricity. But nuclear energy is the major source of the electricity in Korea. So that's why you need more nuclear energy too. Because of electrifications. Also, one thing I'd like to mention, but our nuclear energy is based on the condition of the peaceful and safe use. So, you very, emphasize the safety, and so far our performance was very good, and so that's why, you very, emphasize at this moment safety and security and non-proliferation. And I like to, for example, South Korea and North Korea, go to quite different, approach and a different way in view of the nuclear energy. So North Korea go to, nuclear weapon program, and since 1980s and 70s, but the Korea go to, very, peaceful and safe use of nuclear energy. So this, make the big difference. Until the 1970s, the GNP of the North Korea is equivalent to GNP of the South Korea. But now the almost 20 times, 30 times smaller than, the South Korea. North Korea's GNP is much smaller than South Korea. That's one of the reasons is based on the stable energy supply. So because in North Korea because they don't have enough electricity, they cannot produce the commodity and or service, and they have a big problem because of their tree and the forest disappears because of energy shortage. It bring about flooding, and so their agriculture product also disappear and reduced. So they have many problems. So that's why but Korea produced electricity at the very cheap cost. So that's why it's the it is the basis for economic growth. So that's the I like to point out. But so in the future, you need nuclear energy for green growth based on the condition of the peaceful and safe use. That's my presentations.
Thank you very much. Are you saying, and the implication of what you said is that Fukushima and the disaster there has had no impact on South Korean plans or attitudes?
Yeah, but after Fukushima, you need more focus on safety and security. So now the Korea recently you made a nationwide inspection of all the nuclear power plant, and you will strengthen the nuclear regulatory system, and you will emphasize the more safety, and also you'll. But let me tell these things. Nuclear safety, in some sense, is very complicated. Some sense is very simple. At the current light water reactor, for nuclear safety, you must meet the two conditions: safe shutdown of the. But now, even safe shutdown, you must cool down the decay heat. Decay heat is the problem this time in Japan and the TMI. So now, if you develop the good system, good safety system for decay removal, there's no problem of the core melt. So in Korea, now you make an effort in the how to remove the decay heat safely. So you need whether you use the active system or passive system. So that's why in Korea, you are making the old effort for the decay removal systems. So if you if you remove the decay heat efficiently, there's no problems for core melt or severe accident. That's my point.
Thank you very much. Ellen, please.
Thanks, Simon. I'm going to focus on the Gulf region, the Persian Gulf, the GCC countries in particular. In part, we could think of these countries as the energy center of gravity of the 20th century, and yet these countries are all deeply interested in acquiring nuclear energy, and given the fact that unlike Japan and Korea, they could provide for their domestic requirements from their extraordinary deposits and resources of hydrocarbons, it is worth asking the question, why such a deep interest in going nuclear in the Arab Gulf countries and in Iran, of course, as well? And I think there's a socioeconomic story here, which is that these countries, for the most part, have made a strategic decision to try to husband the resources that they have, since their economies are so heavily dependent on the export of oil and gas. They, I think, are thinking long-term that it is better to deplete that resource in a more gradual way. Meanwhile, their immediate conditions at home are rising populations, extreme water scarcity. The water scarcity in the Arabian Peninsula is the worst in the world, and a rising energy demand because of prosperity. So these trends do not all fit very nicely together. It does mean that there is an energy deficit in this region. They are projecting by 2030 a twofold increase in energy, while the population is increasing by a third, and the water scarcity problem is worsening by about 30%. So now, I had speculated earlier that the Gulf countries were interested in nuclear energy to get in the game of having leverage vis-a-vis Iran, to possibly provide some incentives for Iran to rethink or to develop a regional strategy for nuclear energy that might include Iran. But I think when you visit these countries, you see that these are kind of national development goals that they each have on their own. So I appreciated Mr. Suzuki talking about the green future and how subjective that term is. So what does green future mean in the Gulf region? I think it means we will be able to sustain our consumer lifestyle by relying very heavily on technology. That technology will provide the solution. In the United States, the debate about who's green and who's not is very different. It's about changing consumption patterns, eating locally, reducing our reliance on technology. But I think in the Gulf region, the assumption is that the extraordinary prosperity they're enjoying will be sustainable, and that somehow technology will simply provide for whatever deficits they have of natural resources and allow them to live. So it is in the Gulf region that you have these experiments, these model cities that are supposed to be carbon neutral, in the part of the world where the carbon footprint on a per capita basis is the highest in the world. So I think we have these extremes of an idealization of what would a carbon neutral lifestyle look like, but a reality that these are very energy intensive societies and are likely to remain so. I wanted to just call to your attention, last year we were invited to Saudi Arabia to do a workshop with the King Faisal Center, and nuclear dangers, nuclear realities. What we were, with the very enlightened Prince Turki, who of course is an important voice on the global non-proliferation debate, he invited us to bring 10 international scholars, and we actually had Dr. Bungun Jun from EFANS with us as part of our group, to expose the Saudi nuclear energy experts to the wider conversation about energy and non-proliferation. And sort of the more complex picture of what does acquiring nuclear technology really mean. So the Saudi side presented all of their ambitions and these grand schemes about acquiring nuclear energy, and the international group talked about nuclear energy in the context of other nuclear requirements. What was striking is that the Saudis see this as a very long-term strategy. They are building a human capital capacity and looking at legislative and regulatory reforms, but this is a generational project for them. They are building institutions that will train a new generation of nuclear experts. And while the Saudis have associated themselves with the notion of a regional program that might be based in Saudi Arabia but provide electricity to the very small and more vulnerable sort of city-states that are along the Gulf Coast, in reality, I think for the Saudis this is a national goal, and they may be able to add a regional dimension to it, but it's not clear that they will wait for the other GCC countries to join them. Having said that, it's clear that the UAE, the United Arab Emirates in particular, is in even more of a rush than the Saudis are. And of course, there's the very important collaboration with the Republic of Korea to develop the UAE's nuclear capability. And I guess one last point I would make is that while the UAE was very eager to establish its bona fides on demonstrating its non-proliferation responsibilities by signing what in the U.S. is called a 1-2-3 agreement, and basically agreed to not pursue any kind of enrichment capacity domestically, the Saudis have indicated very clearly that that's not the plan, the route they are likely to take. And I think if we take into account the worsening of U.S.-Saudi relations very recently, all the more reason that the Saudis are going to be sensitive on sovereignty issues. And even though they may have a public position on nuclear weapons, when it comes to developing their nuclear energy, they do not plan to sacrifice any of their options at the front end of that process. So we are not likely to see a 1-2-3 agreement with the Saudis, even though there was an initial memorandum of cooperation between the United States and Saudi Arabia for nuclear cooperation. So I think we have these regional versus national dynamics here, but the overall picture is that what the countries of the Gulf region need is diversified energy programs that will include solar. Solar is strangely a little bit underdeveloped in this very sunny part of the world, but it will be in the future some mix of hydrocarbons, nuclear energy, and solar. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I wonder if I could impose on you, as I know it's not your area, but you live in the world's largest economy and its second biggest energy emitter, just to talk briefly about how the Obama administration is looking at carbon emissions and possibly in relation to nuclear energy ahead of the Durban summit at the end of the year.
Well, I guess there's 2 points. One is that, the United States has not been a vanguard country on climate change policies, and yet if we think about Copenhagen, if you think of the size of the United States and the diversity of our kind of political culture, what's clear is that parts of the United States are pretty pioneering in terms of a green future and the policies. The state of California, for example, is as large as many nation states and has very strong environmental and alternative energy promoting policies, whereas at the federal level, if you take all 50 states together, our performance has not been very good. President Obama has tried to use the stimulus package that was caused by the economic crisis that we've been in to really move in the direction of greater diversification of energy opportunities. And I think there is some progress beginning on that front of trying to invest in these alternative fuels. We are seeing also the major oil companies come around on this point. Instead of resisting or combating the notion that the U.S. government should invest in alternative fuels, the oil companies have, perhaps to protect their own reputations after the Gulf oil spill, or the U.S. Gulf oil spill, the oil companies are also trying to be partners here and demonstrate themselves that they will not avoid or resist entirely. But so far, the investment in these alternative fuels, there's a problem of scale of whether these investments will ever reach significant percentages of usage in the country for the foreseeable future.
Thank you very much. Abdulmajid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Since I am the last speaker, the last session of the last plenum, I would like to just say thanks to the Asian Institute for inviting me to this important event, and especially coming from Tunisia. And you all probably saw and heard about what happened in Tunisia, and Tunisia has started and has initiated the Arab Spring with the revolution. So Tunisia right now is a democratic country, and it's a free country, and we are happy to join the rest of the world and the rest of the democracies. My colleagues on the panel talked about everything, including the Arab world. So I will have to maybe reshape or repeat that in some other way. Let me say that the Arab countries have registered a tremendous delay in the use of nuclear technology for energy production. I would like to remind and to inform you that one of the Arab countries started their nuclear program at the same time as the South Korean nuclear program. And you all know that the Arab countries are still at the step one, and North Korea has passed all those steps. Let me go back to some facts about the Arab region in general and not the Gulf, and because this is geographically harmonized region. The climate is arid, semi-arid. There is a rapid industrial development in the region, which leads to an increase in pollution. There is definitely an increase in living standards and an expansion of the population. Of course, also the region is looking at an increase in agriculture production, and definitely, as my colleague said, there is a water scarcity issue. Water is a major element and a major problem for the North Africa and the Middle East. It's a perennial issue, and we have to address it either for agriculture, for industrial, or for consumption. So there is also a high level of urbanization right now going on. There are many health problems due to heat stress, and of course there is a change in economy due to possible oil decrease. So on the side of the green future of the region and the Arab region, we would say that the pace, the cost, and the extent of our response to climate change will depend critically on the cost, performance, and availability of technologies of the renewable sources. So for a green environment, we may tend to make towards low carbon development pathway. It requires the adoption of adequate instruments, policies, and practices, such as effective carbon price signal, regulations, standardization, taxes and charges, and change in lifestyle. So let me tell you a few things about my organization, the Arab Atomic Energy Agency, and what we are doing. We are helping the Arab countries, of course, establishing their nuclear power programs and power plants. We are coordinating the activities among Arab countries. We are providing assistance wherever they required and wherever they wanted. We assist them also in harmonizing regulations for safety, security, and safeguard. And, of course, we coordinate all science and technologies activity among Arab countries and with the international organizations. So looking at the nuclear renaissance that we have seen recently, many Arab countries have declared and their intention to introduce nuclear power for electricity generation and seawater desalination, and that's an important element, seawater desalination. There are a few facts that I would like to mention why this renaissance and why this decision of the Arab countries. The global energy demand expected to double by 2050. The global oil demand is expected to rise to about 115 million barrels a day by 2030. By 2030, greenhouse gas emission will rise to 42 billion tons and in 2030, while it was about 27 billion in 2005. Of course, the use of oil in the Arab countries and in the world in general has a major effect, and the burning of oil major effect on the climate. There is an increasing demand from the emerging economies. The emerging economies are booming in terms of consumption of oil, and the capacity of the Middle East is not increasing at the same pace and at the same rate. So the need for electricity and water desalination in the Arab countries stems from the fact that, like my colleague said, in 2030, the population of the Arab world will reach 650 million. And the electricity consumption will be about 4.5 million kilowatt hour per day. In terms of water demand, 360 million cubic meter per day. And as you know, there is actually in the world 60% of the desalinated water is in the Arab countries and specifically in the Gulf region. Of course, desalination use at this moment mainly oil and fossil fuel, and you all know, and I have no intention to repeat that has a major contribution to greenhouse effect. So the desalination we're using nuclear technology is a kind of a choice and maybe a must and not a choice anymore. And nuclear power also, not only for because it is because it has no or very low greenhouse effect, but also, as my colleague said, it is a low operational cost, and it has a low operational cost. The uranium resources are available, and for so long, and estimates indicate that about what we have right now can satisfy the demand of the actual reactors for about 230 years, and who knows in the future. So the Middle East and the Arab countries are mostly and very much interested in having a mix. They have oil, and they would have to have nuclear power. In waiting for the renewable energies technologies, when they develop, then it will get into the mix. And as you know, solar sources in the Gulf and in the Arab region it's like oil. We hope that one day technology will make a breakthrough and that we can use the solar energy that we have available 360 days per 360 days a year. And that's an important element. Let me just say and justify for the future, nuclear power will prepare the Arab region for a smooth transition from non-renewable fossil energy sources, heavy emitters of CO2 gas, to renewable sources such as solar and wind. Nuclear energy is the source to secure reliable production of electricity. Actually, to replace oil, nuclear power is mainly the only source and a reliable source and a continuous and a stable source to produce stable electricity and stable grid production for electricity. So I would like to go where the conclusion and say a world free of nuclear weapons, so this is another topic, should not be a world free of nuclear science and technology applications. The Arab countries would like to introduce nuclear technologies and nuclear power in their technologies, in their mix of energy, in their mix of technology, in their mix of industrial development. And this should not, because of nuclear weapons, it should not be a reason to deny these Arab countries that access to the nuclear technology. And we heard the first day some panelists talking about this issue, maybe of the proliferation issue. When we provide nuclear technology, then it could go somewhere else. I think the Arab countries at this moment are dedicated and intend to use the nuclear science and technology for the peaceful application specifically. So I would like to say at the end that nuclear accidents usually are like the one that happened now in Japan, naturally occurred, and they are exceptional, they are unpredictable, and unfortunately, they drew very high media attention at the international level. And it is unfortunate at that situation. But on the other hand, fossil fuel that are causing greenhouse effect, of course there is media attention, but I think the media pays a lot more attention to these spectacular accidents once in a while. I have, so it is, the last point maybe it would say that to contribute for a green global environment, strong commitment is needed to strengthen technology and research and development, maybe to attain zero radioactive waste. Maybe we need to strengthen the research capabilities, the research and development capabilities in the nuclear field to attain that zero radioactive waste. And nothing is impossible with technology. I would say that the green environment is not jeopardized by the nuclear field. Unfortunately, we had the nuclear renaissance before the Japan accident, but now we may have a nuclear decadence again, and let's hope not. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and let me apologize on behalf of the international media. But it does seem to me that, I mean, since Fukushima, quite apart from the press attention, we've seen Germany decide to phase out its nuclear generating program. We've seen Italy vote just this week against restarting one. We've seen China and India announce quite extensive safety reviews of their civil nuclear programs. It seems to me, in a way, surprising that you're all so sanguine about the, if you like, the political feasibility as well as the economic feasibility of nuclear generation. But perhaps we should throw it open at this point for questions, because time is getting on. We have one immediately there. If I could ask you to introduce yourself and wait for a microphone.
Thank you very much. My name's Trevor Finlay. I'm from Carleton University in Canada. There are two very prominent MIT studies that indicate, at least for the United States, that nuclear energy is amongst the most expensive alternatives to energy in the absence of significant government subsidies and or a price on carbon. So I'm wondering, in the case of South Korea, Professor Chang, to what extent does the South Korean government subsidize nuclear energy, and does the consumer pay the real price of the electricity? And presumably you don't have a carbon tax or carbon price in this country. And for Dr. Suzuki, Japan is legally obliged under the Nuclear Safety Convention to have an independent regulator. So with all due respect, it's not much of a commitment to say that that's what Japan is going to have. The question is how. So like our moderator, I'm wondering if I can draw you out on some of the details, at least some speculation on how that will go. Thanks.
Okay. As I mentioned before, in Korea, utility buy the electricity from nuclear energy at 4 cents. And actually, the utility sell the electricity about 10 cents. And but the utility buy the electricity cost from solar energy, they buy 80 cents. So actually, which is the subsidy? So maybe they pay the subsidy to the business for the solar energy, but not the nuclear energy. Actually, pay the subsidy for the electricity cost from solar energy. That's the So 4 cents account for everything. From the capital cost and also back and pure cycle cost, waste, everything. It covers.
Dr. Suzuki.
Yes. I have to explain what the current status is first. I think current status is that Nuclear Industry Safety Agency is within METI, which promotes nuclear power. And then NISA is supervised by Nuclear Safety Commission in the Prime Minister's office, Cabinet office. So under the Japanese situation, Nuclear Safety Commission is supposed to play an independent role. But unfortunately, the current resource is so limited, and they divide into two, Nuclear Safety Commission and the NISA. So what we are going to do is probably to combine those two in one agency and separate from METI, probably under the Prime Minister's office, but we don't know yet. And so that probably looks like U.S. NRC type, or maybe French type, which is separate from CEA under I think it's an independent institution. But it still takes some time. As I said yesterday, one of the difficulties is to secure the expertise of the agency's human resources, and that may have to change the law of the government employee, public officers rule, because under the Japanese law, the government agencies of employees is circulating among the different agencies. That will not be good for accumulating expertise. So that has to be changed.
We have a two-fingered intervention from the second row, and then Ellen, please.
I don't know, there may be Nobuya Sabe from Japan, Japan Institute of International Affairs. I've been interested in this question of cost and have been looking into the figures. There may be other experts who may know better than I do, but let me tell you. The Research Institute in Japan of power industry posted cost comparison. It's about 4 or 5 yen per kilowatt hour for nuclear power generation. It's about the same. 90 cents, around 90 cents for solar power. That's our calculation. But there's an NGO critique of nuclear power generation in Japan. They made a separate calculation. They said it is close to 20 yen per kilowatt hour. So it's still it's cheaper than solar energy, if that is true. I also made a calculation about the cost of accident compensation. The TEPCO some time ago was said to be liable for something like $40 billion compensation. I divided that with the electricity generated by TEPCO. The plan was to pay up within 10 years. That amounts to something like 1 yen per kilowatt hour per $10 billion compensation. So it is $4 billion, that means 4 yen per kilowatt hour. That doubles the cost of nuclear power generation, but still cheaper than solar energy. But that does not include the cost of all the psychological anxiety, people's worry. So then what you do, that's a separate decision you have to make.
Silence the press.
Just one sentence. I wanted to agree with Trevor that I think some of these cost comparisons are not fully taking into account the initial capital investment and how long it takes. At least 2 Arab countries have decided not to go the nuclear route because of cost, and that would include Oman and Bahrain.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Charles McCombie from Switzerland. My question is to do with Fukushima. First of all, a perspective. Fukushima is a massive industrial accident. Massive. It's going to be very expensive short-term and very expensive long-term. It's not a catastrophe in terms of loss of human life. There is none as yet. In fact, civilian nuclear power is still by far the least hazardous form of producing larger amounts of energy. So why has it created such a huge impact? Certainly in my part of the world, in Switzerland where I live, the worry of the human tragedy is to do with the evacuation of people for a long time from where they live. That's the big anxiety that's caused around everywhere. A side remark is that people have been moved from where they live in different places for other reasons in the past, by forced evacuations for dams, by abandonment of mines and so on. We heard at the beginning of this week how the founder of the Asan Institute was 30 years from his homeland for political reasons. But this movement of people is the thing that really strikes terror into the hearts of the public and the politicians in my part of the world, which is why Switzerland has also had this knee-jerk reaction against it. So my question, to be then specific, is that in the Fukushima case, the nicest thing that could happen, if something nice could happen, would be a year from now or 2 years from now, people would look back and there would be a small contaminated area, maybe for a long time, but people would be back there living and nobody would have died immediately. And then people might be shaking their head, and why did I change decades or generations worth of planning there, yeah? So my question then, the difficult question to Suzuki-san is, how likely is that? Do you have any estimate of how well it's going to be cleanable and how soon it's going to be cleanable?
Yeah, if I could interject there, one of Britain's prominent green campaigners, George Monbiot, took Fukushima as a reason to become a convert to nuclear power. You know, that if it can take this, the worst you could possibly throw at it, with so little human fallout. Dr. Suzuki.
Well, that's exactly what we have to do when we reassess the nuclear energy. And Abe-san, thank you very much for your comments about the compensation, but we have to also include the cleanup costs, which is much, much larger than just compensation. And the initial estimate is already $250 billion. And so that's going to be a huge impact. As Charlie said, this is an industrial catastrophe, not a human catastrophe, but still, this magnitude of accident will have a huge impact on people's perception. And when we assess the nuclear energy, again, I don't know how to quantify those things. That's a difficult thing to do. But in any case, the physical recovery of the site is the biggest issue that we have to consider in the future. I don't think we'll be finished in 1 year or 2 years. It will probably take much longer than that, probably. But the area of the contamination is much less than the Chernobyl accident, about 1/10. But the contamination level is almost same as Chernobyl. So some of the area we have to clean up very rapidly for the people to come back. In the Chernobyl case, much less populated. So in the Fukushima case, it's more populated area, so you have to have a hard time to do that.
Thank you. Could I take 2 or 3 quick questions and quick answers, because we're really already running out of time. Alexei in the third row.
My name is Alexei Finenko. I am from Moscow Institute of International Security Studies. I have a more political question than economical. If we say about the development of nuclear energy, such is a problem of non-proliferation. As far as I remember, 7 or 8 years later, a lot discussed about the reform of World Nuclear Association, the institute which observe the uranium mining. What is your opinion about this problem? Do we need about the new international institute for observe of world uranium market?
Thank you. Could you pass the microphone behind you? There's another question just there. Thank you.
One short question to our Arab colleague here. As far as I know, Israel has no civil nuclear program because they fear the terrorist threat against it. When I look to the nuclear programs in the Arab countries, my question to you would be, how will you guarantee in the future the security of your peaceful nuclear reactors in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think there's another question in the second row there.
Thank you. My name is Jae-bum Kim in the Korean Council on Foreign Relations. I have just a very small follow-up question to Dr. Suzuki about the urban planning of Tohoku Prefecture, which sounds very ambitious and ideal. But even if you build a new dwellings for the residents in the prefecture, maybe you will not still free from the natural disasters, tsunami and earthquakes. So at the end of the preliminary analysis of the disaster, you will, at the end of this year, have some kind of blueprint for the reconstruction of the prefecture. Why don't you, as an expert, recommend to the prefecture government and the central government as well a kind of a removal of the residents to build new cities and new dwellings where they can feel free from the natural catastrophes? Thank you.
Dr. Machu, would you be able to take on both the question on proliferation in the world uranium market and the specific question directed to you about the protection of civil nuclear facilities in the Middle East?
Right. Thank you very much. Let me, if I understand well, the question of the second question regarding the Israeli peaceful nuclear program. You said they don't have one. Okay. Well, it's even worse. The news and they have even they have the bomb, not on the peaceful. So it's even worse. For the Arab countries and the peaceful applications and the peaceful utilization, all the Arab countries have signed agreements and they have ratified all treaties with IAEA in terms of safeguard, in terms of inspection, and in terms of international fulfillment of all standards and safety issues and safety standards. So from that point of view, I don't feel any problem because it will be followed very closely by the international community. Of course, when there is a natural disaster, nobody can stop that. It's like what happened in Japan. Even the most advanced country cannot do anything about that.
I think the specific question was about terrorism, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm coming.
Sorry.
Yeah. So on that basis, then at this moment, right now, all the Arab countries are carrying out nuclear safety and nuclear security programs. They established, most of them, regulatory authorities. And it is programs are underway with close cooperation with friendly countries in terms of to ensure that these nuclear facilities are well protected, well secured, and well safeguarded. Regarding the uranium issue, I think it's in the same context that IAEA has the role and will have a major action in this field, while it will regulate, it will control, it will inspect the uranium resources that are available within a country as a producer or within a country as a user.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think your proposal is well taken. I think it's included in the plan. The new city should be resilient against natural disaster. And that's probably the more important, actually, for the energy future. But that's included in the plan. But what I was talking about the green future, so I was talking about the energy infrastructure.
Okay. I don't know if Ellen or Professor Chung, if you had anything to add on the uranium market. No.
So right now, many but there are many proposals in the international community for the international pure supply and the international pure storage as a multinational approach. So already IAEA proposed that kind of things, international pure centers, and so which can be used for who like to start the nuclear power program, and also so now to reduce the use of the reprocessing or enrichment. So now the many proposal for international centers.
I fear that at any moment we're going to be asked to end, but please, just one more quick question.
Thank you very much. I'd like to point out two things. One is how to reduce human errors. in 3 major nuclear accidents. All human errors were involved. Second, how to political leadership respond to this kind of accident or serious situation. For instance, during the 3 Mile Island accident, President Carter had previously experienced dispatching to Canada, so he quickly responded. Reform-minded Gorbachev, he released and let the people know, although it was too late. But this time, incremental measures of Japan's Prime Minister Khan, it's regrettable, He could not respond quickly. He did not take seriously advice from France or United States. So how can you advocate this kind of leadership? Thank you.
Okay, let me mention about how to reduce the human error. Okay, to reduce the human error, the best way is you must make the good manual, considering all the scenario. Yeah, so actually, right now the most important thing to reduce the human error is to make the best manual, and also to educate the operator based on the best manual. That's the I think the best way to reduce the human error. And also, you must have the good safety culture among the organizations.
One more question. Oh, have we got time for just one more?
Can I make one comment on human
sorry.
error?
I think we better leave the questions at Plenum. Just one more comment.
Thank you very much. Regarding the question of human error, I think human errors will be there and will never end. Sometime it will show. But how we can correct them and maybe how we can fight them or combat them is by improving the technologies. We need to work on the technologies in all aspects, so as even if there is a human error, the technology should repair that and should counteract and to avoid any type of accident.
Thank you very much, and I do apologize to the remaining questioners, but we have been asked to finish, so we'll have to wrap it up now. And I hope you will join me in thanking our excellent panelists for their contributions.
Thank you so much. Please remain seated. We have prepared a slideshow for the closing session. Please enjoy.
Thank you very much. To show everybody what they've been doing. Thank you. Well, it's a 35-minute long thing, so from what I just heard, so we're not going to show you the whole thing. It's going to be up at the back at the institute when we go over there for lunch. But I'm just here to say thank you for your. I understand that every single panel, all the breakout sessions have been just perfect in the sense of participation, and I think every session ended with somebody saying, "Please end." I don't know if you noticed, we had some big signboard saying 5 minutes, please end, please end. And I think it's the best sign, best compliment for the panel when we had to cut off questions and not be able to take all of them. I wanted to thank all of you for coming all the way, and especially our partner organizations who really made it possible, because they're the ones who organized the panels for us and brought everybody over. So thank you. Please mark your calendars. You noticed on our program, next year it's going to be April 25 to 27. And it's going to be here. It's going to be the same venue. The topic might change, but I expect all of you to be here regardless. Last but not least, I wanted to, you've seen them, they were ubiquitous, but I wanted to introduce to you my staff, because I think I'm very proud of the work they've done. So please join me on the stage. If you would. 빨리요. 저긴 안 나와? In the back? 빨리. Quick. 들어와. 올라와. So this is everyone except for the advanced team who had to go over to the institute to prepare for lunch. But thank you guys, you did a great job. Please, another one. 하나 둘 셋 하면 감사합니다. 합시다. 하나 둘 셋 감사합니다. So that brings us to the conclusion of our first Asan Plenum, and I sincerely hope that we see you at the next one. But this isn't the real end, so please, all of you, there will be a bus waiting for you outside at 11:30 promptly, and we'll leave for the Institute, which is a 10-minute ride, and we'll have a nice, relaxing lunch there. So thank you. Hope to see you there. If not, hope to see you next year. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's it.